Hello, Disney fans. February's here. In fact, we're in the middle of February, and that could be a tough month for some people. We're just trying to get through the end of winter, waiting for spring to come. We're all sick of the cold. But there are good things about February, as there are about every time of the year. For one thing, it's Black History Month. Now, in honor of Black History Month, I wanted to talk about the Proud Family. It may come as a shock to some people to realize this series first aired in 2001, and it was the first animated series to feature an African American family in the main roles. Just think about that, it took until 2001 for there to be a cartoon focused on a black family. That took a while. Well, back when the Proud if I could talk today. Back when the Proud Family first aired, I didn't really watch it that much. It has some weird things about it. For example, most of the series seems to be focused on the life of Penny Proud living her life as an average teenage girl. And if the show would have stuck to one thing or another, maybe I would have liked it more, but it couldn't really seem to make up its mind what it wanted to be at first. Was it a family comedy? Was it going to focus on weird things like Penny randomly having the ability to talk to a tiger in one episode? And for another thing, the animation is not quite what I would have expected of a Disney cartoon. It looks more like something I would expect from, say, Nickelodeon. There's nothing wrong with it, but it doesn't quite live up to what you would expect from, say, DuckTales or Rescue Rangers, Tailspin, the animated cartoon series that preceded it. So I didn't really watch it at first, but lately I've gotten into it. I've started rewatching it, and I've started to realize just how great this series really is. If you've seen my review of Pinocchio, you know I talk about how that movie has perfect animation, but that's not necessarily going to make it a great movie. With The Proud Family, it's the opposite. The animation, in my opinion at least, is not what it could have been, but it's the characters that draw you in. You've got Penny Proud, who is the major focus, and for most episodes, she's just trying to live a normal life, interacting with her family, who can be a little wacky, consisting of her dad, her mom, and twin siblings, plus her sugar mama. If you've seen the series, I'm betting Sugar Mama is your favorite character. She is hilarious. You gotta love her outlook on things. She's a great grandma to Penny. She is she would be a very fun person to know in real life. The dad of the family, Oscar, he's your typical wacky dad, grounded by his wiser, more realistic wife. And an interesting thing in here is it's the wife who supports the family, and she's a veterinarian, which is a little bit of an unusual job to have. The dad works, but he's trying to get his business making snacks off the ground. So I thought that was an interesting twist on a family to have the mom be the breadwinner. So you can see right away this series has a few things to shake things up. And it also shakes up Black History Month in a very special episode where they focus on it. Rather than focus on the series as a whole, which I'm probably going to come back and do at another point, I really wanted to focus on this one particular episode because it brings up so much that is overlooked for Black History Month. And this episode starts out actually as a history lesson, which the whole episode is. It begins with Penny's history teacher starting to tell them the history of how Black History Month came to be.
Due to a desire to make people aware of accomplishments of Negroes, Dr. Carter G. Woodson created...
Don't you mean African Americans, Mr. Webb?
Well, in 1926, when Dr. Woodson started Negro History Week, that was the name African Americans were called, among other things.
Mr. Webb is the kind of teacher that I think we'd all love to have. He's passionate about his subject, and he knows how to teach a lesson. unfortunately, this class is not really all that receptive to the idea. Mostly because of the fact that they've had the same lesson over and over.
Man,
What's wrong?
it's just boring. Every year we get the same assignment. What happened in the past has happened. This is the 21st century. Why do we have to keep going over it? We're all hip hop now.
Well, like my mama used to tell me, Miss Proud, a person who doesn't understand his past won't have a future.
Those are some pretty wise words. A person who doesn't understand his past won't have a future. We have a lot to learn from history. And especially these past few years, I'm not so sure we've learned those lessons. But I do understand what the class is saying. The same lessons tend to get taught repetitively. I remember in grade school, we pretty much, in my class at least, learned the same things in history year after year after year, just skimming the surface and not getting into any real depth of it. There was so much more to history than what we were being taught. Now, Mr. Webb realizes that, and he understands that the way Black History Month has been taught has to be changed a little, has to be made more relative to the students, made more real, and that they have to cover things that they've never been taught before. And so he agrees a change is needed.
Agree. Black History Month has fallen into a rather predictable pattern.
Does that mean we're not going to have George Washington Carver peanut butter cookies?
Of course we will, Miss Jones. Some things you just don't change.
Couldn't resist. As good as peanut butter cookies are, there's a lot more to George Washington Carver than peanut butter, and there's a lot more to Black History Month than the figures that we typically learn about. Malcolm X, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King. There are so many more figures that get overlooked whose names we've never even heard. And the class is about to learn about them. Mr. Webb gives them an assignment to each come to class the next day dressed as the person from history he's going to tell them, and they will have to give a short biography of that person. None of these kids have any clue who these people are.
Does anybody know who Angela Davis is? It just says activist here. Never heard of her? I got Bessie Coleman, aviator. Dang, I was just going to retype the paper I did last year on Sojourner Truth.
As the kids leave their class, they get messing around a little bit and they tease the janitor. Not a good thing to do. Just please be respectful to somebody no matter what their line of work is. But that's what kicks off the major portion of the plot. In running from him, Penny slips on the wet floor and hits her head, which starts off her dream. You don't realize it's a dream at first because you just see her laying there, although you can kind of figure something weird's going on. In her dream, she's about to head off to class for her Black History Month project when she's swept up in a mini tornado, dropped back down, and when she's put back on the ground again, everything's changed. Her first major clue that something's wrong is when she meets the others from her class and they have no idea that their history teacher, Mr. Webb, was ever actually a history teacher.
The one Mr. Webb gave us. Mr. Webb, the janitor. No, Mr. Webb, our history teacher.
Girl, there aren't any colored teachers at this school.
Penny's next clue that something is majorly wrong is when she sees her friend Joey and tries to call to her. This gets a major reaction from everyone because a white person and a black person simply could not be friends.
Zoe, what are you doing? You can't talk to her. It's not allowed. Says who? She's my friend. Why?
This does not go as well as Penny had hoped. Zoe completely does not know her, and the idea of being friends with a black girl is something she would never even have considered. It gets even worse when she shows exactly what she thinks of Penny's family and what place that they hold.
We're girls. We're best friends. I remember. Did your mother clean house for my family? Why wouldn't my mama clean your house? Zoe, this colored girl giving you problems?
The other girls walk on ahead, and Zoe whispers to Penny, "Look, I don't have any friends who aren't white. And it isn't necessarily that Zoe doesn't want to be friends with a black girl. She actually sounds afraid, and this idea is brought up again later on. It's not just a question of what they want. This is a question of their safety. And that really struck me. Like, I don't think anything else about Black history ever has before. You know, I grew up in all the history classes I took learning about, you know, separate drinking fountains, separate bathrooms, black people having to give up their seats to white people on the bus. But the idea that it was dangerous just for two kids of different races to be friends? I mean, I knew interracial marriage was shocking. You know, a black person and a white person simply didn't get married at the time. In fact, it was still illegal in many states. But the idea that these two kids couldn't even just be friends, that hit. And it hits Penny hard too because Zoe, in the world she knows, in reality, is one of her closest friends. Well, she's still thinking on that when she goes to history class later. And she notices the different conditions that are going on in the classroom. In fact, she thinks it's for a class project yet.
Black? Who you calling black? You and me and the rest of us sitting back here with the old textbooks.
Miss Brown.
That was a detail that I didn't learn about until I was in high school. And a favorite teacher of mine gave me a book called Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. And it's mentioned in there about the different conditions in schools even when they were integrated. That the black kids got the books that were worn out, torn, damaged. Even integrated, they weren't treated the same. And I'm really glad to see that detail brought up because that's one of the things that in from what I've seen is glossed over a lot. Not only is Penny seeing the differences in conditions here and that they have to remain separate, but the former janitor, who is the history teacher in this reality, tells Penny that there is no such thing as black history. Penny stands up in the classroom and begins to tell the class about all the contributions that black people have made, including ones that we probably would not, I don't think the average person would have heard of outside of this episode. And again, kudos to this for bringing up all the people who get overlooked during Black History Month.
Well, Garrett Morgan, a black man, invented the traffic light. Dr. Daniel Hale Williams, another black man, performed the first open heart surgery. The Super Soaker, the kids' bombest toy ever, was invented by Lonnie G. Johnson, a black engineer.
Penny's actually sent home for this. She's being punished for speaking up in class. Even though, you know, what she's telling them is correct, the teacher doesn't want to face this. She's sent home, and that's when she discovers the truth, or at least the truth of what she's dreaming.
If I didn't know any better, I'd swear it was 1920 or something.
No, it's 1955.
Whatever reality she's in, Penny's gonna fight back. This is the same girl who fought to be on the boys' football team, who organized a strike among the neighborhood kids to get them better allowances. She's got guts. And she's not going to back down from making friends with people who she knows are her friends. Well, she gets the chance the next day when Zoe's worried about a little bird. Penny knows her mom's a vet, at least in the reality she's always known. Her mom can take care of this bird. And she tells Zoe, look, the bird doesn't know black or white. The bird just knows that they need help. Zoe agrees to go with her, and the mom reacts like this is the most natural thing in the world. She is so glad to see the two girls are friends. The father reacts with fear. he makes the comment that Penny's going to get the house burned down someday, and this is not played for laughs at all. This is a very real danger, just because the two girls are friends. But the mom, like I said, she reacts with compassion and treats the little bird while she tells the two girls to go play with the twins, and they have another good talk.
Me. You know, the whites, the blacks, Los Angeles. That's just the way it is. Integration is new. It's going to take time for people to get used to it, if they ever get used to it. What if I were to tell you that one day people would get used to it, for the most part, that is? I wouldn't believe it.
Integration is unfortunately still new. Now I know that's going to sound crazy, but think about this. Ruby Bridges, the first girl to desegregate her school in Louisiana, is only 67 today. That is my parents' generation. One generation removed from me, was segregated. At the time my mom went to high school, a black person and a white person dating was hugely shocking, almost unspeakable. This is not ancient history. This is something that people who are very much alive today experienced. And that is disturbing. And it's not something that we can just turn a blind eye to. This is history we have to understand. Well, Penny understands it because she's currently living it. Or at least, she thinks she is. Her and Zoe go to class and they start to work together to get the class together.
What? What? Haven't you ever seen two friends sit next to each other before? Not like us, they haven't. Well, you have now. Come on, guys. We don't have to make the same mistakes our parents made.
I think that's a pretty powerful line. We don't have to make the same mistakes our parents made. And there are still parents today teaching their kids that it's wrong for different races to be together. I've heard parents tell their kids that kind of thing. I've seen interviews where cameramen took their cameras out on the street and talked to kids, and these kids had learned from their parents that it was wrong for them to play with with kids who were a different skin color. Kids aren't born knowing, oh, we are different. Kids are born thinking, oh, new playmate. They learn hate. But it's the younger generation who can help to put a stop to it, who can break the chain, who can say, we're not going to do what the last generation did. We know better. We can learn. And maybe we can teach some of the last generation too. And that's exactly what Penny does. The teacher comes in, and he is not at all happy to see them together. But it's together that this class makes a stand.
Then off to the principal's office. Both of you, go on.
No, sir.
Stop that. Okay. You leave me no choice but to call security. Everyone else, into the hallway right now.
I'm not leaving. Me either. Me either.
Now that is strength. And he realizes it when he's afraid of it. These kids can take him on if they stick together. And they do. They walk out of the classroom united, and it comes to a head, and the tables turn when Penny starts to recite Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. And it really gets people listening.
We let it ring from every tenement and every hamlet, from every state to every city. We will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands in singing the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
After this triumphant moment, Penny wakes up from her dream surrounded by her family and friends. I'm guessing this is a reference to The Wizard of Oz, the way the scene is done, plus the fact that Penny thought she was taken to an alternate reality by a tornado. Kinda says Wizard of Oz. I don't know if that's what they were going for, but not a bad way to do it. When Penny wakes up, she tells them all that she's been through and that she's learned just how important knowing that history is.
I had a dream. Because after I recited the Martin Luther King speech about his dream, people changed. And now I realize how things will be different if those words were never heard and if we stop saying them. Your mother's right, Mr. Webb. If you don't understand your past, you won't have a future.
That is a strong reminder of just how important it is to learn history. There's a lot of debate going on right now about teaching critical race theory in class. Should these kids be taught all that went on as part of Black history? And the answer to that question is yes. There's no reason for them not to learn it. And there's every reason for them to learn it. This history, whether you're Black or white, Asian, Native American, Hispanic, whatever, it's important to understand because it is part of our country's history. Not everything in our country's history was good. In fact, a lot of it wasn't. But we can learn from it. We can realize just how important the changes that happened are. And in doing so, maybe we can look at the way things really are today and see how far we still have to go. And maybe take a few steps towards taking that path and getting there. I always end my videos by saying, remember the magic. And I'd like to add that we should also remember our history. Until next time, everyone, take care and let's not lose the memories of what happened. And let's try to build some better ones for future generations.